Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of God appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. She went to the hospital to see a beloved old friend who was failing. When she entered the room, however, she found he was unconscious and realized how close to the end he was. So taking the adjacent chair, she simply sat with him, following his heavy breaths. As the day went on, she realized that she was on holy ground. Our ordinary daily experiences are punctuated from time to time by numinous moments that are far deeper. They pop up in all sorts of ways. Some are foundational, but others continue to shower us in everyday life, most of which we don't recognize at the time. How recently have you had such a numinous experience? Has there been a moment of experiencing holy ground that you can bring to mind? For all of us, underneath the ordinary, there lies a spiritual core, extraordinary experience of the numinous dimension that are windows into the spiritual foundation of life itself. But we have to slow down enough to take time to reflect and recognize them to be able to do something about them. In fact, today you and I have come out on a holiday weekend to church, swimming a little bit against the tide, seeking such presence. So we are already underway. Last Sunday, Sister Promise introduced the infant Moses' plight in a floating basket among the bulrushes in the context of a Pharaoh who, having forgotten Joseph, unleashed oppression on the Hebrews in Egypt. Today, however, we find here is a full-grown Moses shepherding his father-in-law's flock in a solitary place. He is very much alone just with the sheep. In the scorching heat, he spots a bush burning, which piques his curiosity. As he turns aside to examine, he sees that it continues burning without being consumed, and Moses' curiosity starts a dialogue with God. In this passage, we have a primary case study of what a relation with God can look like. Moses' curiosity in seeing and responding to the burning bush leads to hearing God's voice calling him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." The first thing to notice is that God did not engage in command and control, but a conversation continuing with Moses' answer, "Here I am." God replies, instructing him, "Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." The holiness or otherness of the ground is not the setting itself, but was the place of encounter with God. Moses responds in kind by hiding his face out of fear and respect. God continues the conversation with recounting having observed the misery of his people in Egypt on account of their taskmasters. "So come, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But a conversation, of course, is a two-way exchange. So Moses responds with his first objection, which is pretty obvious: who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Moses understands that his task entails being sent to Israel as well. But God continues talking, replying, I will be with you, and this will be a sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God on this holy hill. But Moses is not comfortable that this will be enough and pushes back. If I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? Whether Moses' misgivings are justified or not, what we see is a God and Moses who are collaborating on a plan of action. It's only here that God reveals the mystery of his name. I am who I am. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent you. Holding off on the implications of the divine name for a bit, let's look at their blossoming collaboration. God chose Moses, who in many ways was not a reliable candidate for the task. What begins in today's passage is a repartee between God and Moses, developing a plan that will ultimately lead the Israelites to freedom. How can we best describe their working together other than collaboration, albeit divine and human? We know myriads of partnerships, such as in families, between spouses, parents, and children, or in the broader world in various enterprises and pursuits. So what does this say about our relation to God? Can we see prayer as a conversation where God does not simply say yes or no, but challenges collaboration? God calls you and me whether we are likely candidates or not. Curiosity can be a spiritual lens to use examining our experiences of holy ground, formal or informal. Is there a person we haven't heard from? We see something that needs attention, or we sense something that isn't right. Being curious can open opportunities for following up, taking on, or other respectful action, including prayer. Sister Eleanora Margaret, the sister of St. Margaret who brought the sisters back to Trinity, used to always talk about arrow prayers. When we see a need, it can start simply as an arrow prayer, such as, Lord, help her or him, or Lord, help me. Now let's return to the divine name for its insight into Moses' conversation partner and our own. The Old Testament scholar Terence Fretheim, who describes this passage as one of the most puzzled over verses in the entire Hebrew Bible, notes, the name given consists of the repeated verb to be in the first person, plus the relative participle who, particle who. In the Revised Standard Translation, it is, I am who I am. Other translations include, I will be who I am. I will be God for you. I will be God for you. Not simply that God is present, but that God will be faithfully God to them. The purpose of God's presence with Moses was for action, to free the Israelites from their oppression and forge them into God's chosen people. The burning bush was more than an attention getter. It opened the dialogue between God and Moses. So what does Moses' encounter with God in the wilderness say to you and me as a pattern of God's calling. As Christians, we've been formed in our calling of the baptismal covenant. Whether we remember our baptism or not, baptism set us apart as Christ in the world, as the question in the baptism covenant affirms, the calling to seek Christ in the neighbor, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Our ordinary experiences of the numinous beckon us to journey deeper with God. But as with Moses, calling is a means, not an end, leading us to act. Consider your conversation with God over time and now. What are you able to say yes to? What is holding you back? What is afflicting you? Remember, Moses' objections in this passage were only the prelude to his taking the next step. Finally, what are you being called to do, to act, fulfilling your baptismal covenant, to seek and serve Christ in all persons? Classically, a sacrament is an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. Taking Christ's body and blood in the Eucharist is a continual renewal of Christ's presence, uniting us to the God who will be who I am. So together we may produce good fruit around us. The holy grounding in the present prepares us as we are able to continue a productive conversation of engaging into God's future. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you're standing is holy ground.